Hey, thanks. You know, living in Arkansas, we know tornadoes can happen any time of the year. But of course, now that we are finally in spring, we are now moving into the peak season where tornadoes happen for the most part. Once we get to the latter part of March and into April, they peak in April. Really typically about midway through April into the second half of April, that's when we see the most tornadoes in Arkansas. And they start coming down once we get into the summer months. But of course, they can come back up in the fall. Of course, that's when we typically see them throughout the year. But also the time of the day is really major importance. It's typically when the atmosphere is at its warmest, or at least here at the surface, we're at our warmest, and that's really between the hours of 4 and 9 p.m. So once you get to 4 to 8 p.m., they're really that peak time, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, the peak time to see those tornadoes. But of course, they can happen at any hour of the day. Now, of course, how do tornadoes really happen? It happens a lot because we have that warm, humid air coming up out of the Gulf of Mexico. And perhaps you've heard when the warm air and the cold air clash, that's when tornadoes occur. That's a little bit of an oversimplification for it, but in fact, cold air and warm air are clashing. The cold air is in the upper levels of the atmosphere, diving down out of the jet stream, and along that, little disturbances come up, and those disturbances are riding in the jet stream. But down at the surface, what we'll see happen is that we'll see an actual cold front form, and out ahead of that cold front is where a storm may be forming. Of course, that storm will be forming in that warm, humid flow out of the Gulf of Mexico. As time goes on, we still have all these other winds kind of moving at different directions. The jet stream wind, mainly from the west, and a mid-level wind out of the southwest, and those winds all together actually help the storms that develop in that warm, humid atmosphere to start to turn. We have one moving from the southeast, one from the south and southwest, and one from the west. It's all these different wind speeds and wind directions at different levels actually help this thunderstorm to start to turn. And as it turns, eventually, in the mid-levels of this storm, we see the mesocyclone. And this is what radar picks up on as what could be eventually a tornado. These are all parts of the sciences that we do know well a whole lot about. But it's at this point, once we have that mesocyclone, we begin to wonder exactly how that tornado actually comes to pass. Now, there's still a lot of research going on and a lot of theories on exactly how this occurs. We don't know for sure, but this is still why we continue to do a lot of research to see exactly what happens in the last few minutes when this tornado occurs. But when that mesocyclone does occur, we know we at least have around 10 to 15 minutes before that tornado actually does come to pass. Now, of course, when it comes to tornadoes, we talk about the EF scale, EF5 being the strongest, but typically, in Arkansas, we see most of those around EF1, and that's really true across the entire country. Back to you.